At 0245 hours, the Caribbean Sea is pitch black. On the synthetic aperture radar screen of the P-8 Poseidon aircraft, an unprecedented scene in maritime history is unfolding. 115 speedboats are tearing through the water at 50 knots. This was not a training exercise. This was the largest drug fleet in history carrying out a $350 million operation heading straight for North American waters. In theory, it's like dropping a handful of marbles onto the floor. You might catch 1 or 10, but how can you catch 115 extremely fast-moving balls at once? They believed this chaos was an impenetrable shield and that no one could catch them. But they made a fatal mistake. A mistake that cost them their entire operation. For the past 6 months, the FBI had been puzzled by a strange phenomenon. Hundreds of tons of cocaine were leaving Colombia every month, but never appearing in any seizure reports. No containers were seized at the port, no wreckage found, no traces. Billions of dollars worth of drugs simply evaporated into the vast ocean. Until faint radio signals from an abandoned garage in Colombia matched unusual financial transactions in New York, the veil of secrecy was lifted. Not far from that group of boats, a $1.5 billion steel monster, the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, was drifting in the darkness. No navigation lights, no active radar emissions. It was holding its breath, waiting like a great white shark at the bottom of the ocean. Along with it were the SEALs and Coast Guard forming a deadly pincer that the cartel could never have imagined. In just the next 17 minutes, less time than it takes to watch an episode of a sitcom, the entire fleet would be wiped off the face of the sea. What really happened in those fateful 17 minutes? How did the U.S. Navy manage to herd 115 wolves into the same pen without breaking a sweat in pursuit? Why was this the biggest nightmare for the global criminal underworld? In the next 15 minutes, I'll show you how the FBI, the U.S. Navy, and the Coast Guard executed one of the most dramatic drug seizures in American history. This is the most in-depth analysis compiled from numerous reports and internal tactical analyses that mainstream media outlets don't have access to. Get ready and don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on the latest information about the United States' incredible military capabilities. To understand why this insane chase happened, we have to take a step back and look at the criminal profile of the largest drug fleet in history. For decades, the war on drugs in the Caribbean Sea has been like a dull game of cat and mouse. They often hid drugs in homemade narco submarines, stuffed them into frozen tuna bellies, or used small boats and high-speed speedboats to sneak through shallow waters to evade customs. But about 6 months ago, FBI signal analysts began noticing a strange change in radio frequencies. It was coming from a new cartel branch dubbed Los Invisibles by analysts. This was no ordinary drug gang. They operated like a global logistics company with a bold mindset. Instead of sneaking around, they decided to play with their cards face up using a strategy called swarm tactics. Los Invisibles' mindset is as simple as that of a group of reckless street racers. One car breaking through a checkpoint is easy to catch. But if a fleet of over 100 cars tears through at once, the traffic police will be helpless. They believe that no force in the world has enough fuel and ammunition to chase hundreds of targets scattering in all directions at once. Not only that, but all these boats use super light composite materials, making them nearly invisible to radar. No AIS, no lights, no identification signals. Just 250 horsepower engines roaring in the night communicating via low-frequency radio to avoid detection. After thousands of hours of eavesdropping and data analysis, the FBI reconstructed the route map, and the picture became clearer than ever. They departed from the Guajira coast, spread out in a wedge formation to disperse signals, then converged at a blind spot in international waters, an area about 300 nautical miles off the Mexican coast beyond the usual patrol range. This time they deployed 115 high-speed boats sharing the transport of over 10 tons of cocaine, enough to devastate any major city if all were brought ashore. Thousands of Americans would overdose. The gang would make a fortune. The FBI immediately understood the problem. No Coast Guard or Border Patrol force could stop a fierce pack traveling at 50 knots in the dark of night. You couldn't chase each boat individually, nor could you set up a blockade across the sea. To catch them, you had to catch the entire swarm in a single net. And that's when the Pentagon picked up the phone. A three-way alliance was quickly established between the FBI, the Navy, and the Coast Guard, turning the Caribbean Sea into a chessboard for Operation Trident. The strategists realized there was a tricky technical problem. When 115 high-speed boats ran simultaneously at 50-55 knots. 230 Yamaha engines would generate a tremendous amount of heat. This heat rose mingling with the nighttime sea mist, creating a thick layer of thermal fog on the radar screen. For long-range radar systems, this chaotic cloud of signals is like trying to watch TV in the 90s with a broken antenna noise blurring and no way to identify the real target. Moreover, even with their exact coordinates, it was impossible to pursue them as they formed a sawtooth formation, splitting into multiple branches to break through the target lock. But they forgot one deadly geographical factor that no camouflage could hide: the ocean current. To travel from South America to their destination without running out of fuel midway, the entire fleet had to ride a natural subsurface current to propel them forward. And that current led straight through a narrow channel, sandwiched between two giant underwater reefs. The distance between these two submerged cliffs was only 15 nautical miles, where the strong cross-current cut across. Any high-speed boat that wanted to maintain that rocket speed without capsizing due to broadside waves or running out of fuel by taking a detour was forced to maintain a straight course through this narrow channel. This is a natural choke point on the ocean. If the Cartel fleet moves according to the fuel-saving scenario predicted by the FBI, they will rush into this corridor like dominoes. Here, they cannot turn around, cannot disperse their formation, and most importantly, cannot stop. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, a $1.5 billion steel beast, was ordered to move into the choke point. The captain ordered the activation of emissions control. The active radar was turned off. The communication system switched to silent mode. The 9,000-ton ship now drifted in the darkness, cold and invisible, like a giant submerged rock waiting for its prey to lead itself to its doom. On board, 12 SEALs from the VBSS team were equipped to disable engines, suppress armed resistance, and capture command units. Flanking the coral reef were 2 agile Coast Guard cutters ready to seal off any escape routes. 2 Coast Guard fast response cutters formed the final barrier, pursuing any speedboats attempting to breach the perimeter. While the Navy assembled its forces, the FBI continued to provide priority targets. Above a P-8, Poseidon was on standby, scanning the entire target area with synthetic aperture radar ready to track the Cartel fleet from hundreds of miles away. Close-range weapons were mounted on MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, carrying Hytron-trained marksmen who were preparing for a high-level display of individual technical prowess. They did not carry miniguns to turn the boats into splinters. That would have been satisfying, but would have destroyed evidence for the court. Instead, they were equipped with heavy anti-material rifles, 50 caliber, combined with the latest generation of night vision goggles. Their mission tonight requires the precision of a brain surgeon operating on the back of a galloping horse, disabling the engine blocks of boats bouncing on the waves from a distance of 500 meters in pitch darkness. The paramount requirement of the mission: absolutely no fuel tanks were to be blown up. These boats were loaded with highly flammable bootleg fuel mixed with additives to increase speed. A single misplaced bullet would turn $100 million worth of contraband into a spectacular fireworks display in the open sea, and that was something the FBI did not want. The clock struck 02:45 hours. The Caribbean Sea was as black as ink and eerily silent. 300 sailors, special agents, and Coast Guard officers held their breath in the darkness. All guns were aimed southward, waiting for the roar of hundreds of engines tearing through the night. Finally, the moment the task force had been waiting for all week had arrived. On the P-8 Poseidon's thermal sensor screen, the first bright spots began to appear at the southern edge of the channel. At first, they were just a few small dots, then a whole galaxy of fiery streaks. Over 200 engines roared, propelling 115 boats forward at 90 km/h, forming a giant arrow piercing straight into the kill box. They moved like a programmed machine, trusting absolutely in the ocean currents and the vast emptiness of the sea. But the moment the lead boat touched the edge of the dead zone, a terrifying and illogical incident occurred, stunning the entire command center. Instead of following the current as physics dictated, the first 10 boats suddenly accelerated to full speed. They weren't fleeing. They weren't trying to break through. They turned and rammed into each other. An explosion ripped through the quiet night. A wall of fire erupted right in the middle of the narrow channel. The composite hulls, filled with impure fuel, turned into floating napalm bombs. Can you guess what's happening? Leave a comment if you think this is an accident. But with my experience as a soldier, I can tell you no accident is that synchronized. This is the wall of fire tactic. Los Invisibles realized something was wrong, perhaps the unease of outlaws or simply their standard procedure. They were willing to sacrifice the first 10 boats carrying cheap drugs or even empty boats to create a huge fire blocking the sea. Their goal was not to attack American warships. They wanted to create chaos, smoke, and extreme heat to blind infrared sensors and block the path of the Coast Guard's small boats. They were playing the sacrifice the pawn to save the rook card. At that moment, the rear formation split in two, trying to slip through both sides of the fire to escape. The U.S. Navy's neat ambush plan was in danger of turning into a chaotic chase through a sea of fire. But the captain of the Arleigh Burke did not flinch. He had anticipated even the craziest scenario. The order was issued succinctly over the internal communication system, weapons-free. Immediately from the deck of the destroyer and from the bellies of the Seahawk helicopters hovering overhead, sharp cracks rang out. Bang, bang, bang! It wasn't the roar of machine guns like in the movie Rambo. It was the rhythmic, deadly sound of 50 caliber anti-material sniper rifles. Imagine you are standing on a shaking helicopter with high winds looking down at a boat bobbing on rough waves 300 meters away. Your target is an engine the size of a suitcase. If you shoot above it, you kill the suspect. If you shoot below, you hit the fuel tank, and the boat explodes along with the evidence. But the U.S. Coast Guard's Hytron snipers don't miss. The armor-piercing bullet travels at supersonic speed, tearing through the engine cowling of the outboard motor. Kang! The engine is shattered. The piston seize up. The boat traveling at 50 knots suddenly stops as if hitting an invisible wall, its stern swinging sideways, spinning wildly on the water. 1 boat, 2 boats, then 10 boats. The scene on the sea now resembles a giant pool table where the balls have been suddenly stopped. The boats behind, losing momentum and panicking, began to collide with those that had been disabled ahead. The strong ocean current, which they had believed to be their ally, now became their enemy, sweeping the engineless boats into each other, creating a chaotic knot right in the narrow channel. 17 minutes. That was the exact time from when the first bullet left the barrel to when the last engine died. There was no bloody shootout. The cartel had AK-47s, but what could they do against phantoms beyond their range using night vision technology to pick off engines one by one? As dawn broke over the Caribbean Sea, the scene was both horrific and magnificent. Over 100 speedboats drifted aimlessly, piled on top of each other. The most notorious criminals, those who once believed themselves kings of the ocean, now raised their hands in surrender on their disabled vessels, drifting helplessly in the vast sea. The U.S. Navy didn't need to chase them. They just sent out small boats to fish them out one by one like catching fish in a net. But when FBI agents and SEALs climbed onto the decks of the command boats at the center of the formation, they found something more valuable than 10 tons of cocaine. Something the cartel had fought tooth and nail to protect with its wall of fire tactic. What was it? And why did its discovery send shockwaves through Washington even more than the enormous quantity of drugs? When the metal suitcase was opened in the destroyer's secure room, the FBI agents found no gold or diamonds. What was inside was much more modest, but more destructive than any bomb, an ultra-durable encrypted military hard drive, and a top-secret black satellite communication device. So, why were they so important? If U.S. forces capture a drug trafficker, it's like cutting off the tail of a lizard. It will regrow in a few weeks. But this device, it's the brain. It contains the offline digital map of the entire Los Invisibles logistics network built over 5 years. Coordinates of secret fuel depots, communication frequencies of the mothership lists of bribed officials, and the shipping schedule for the next 6 months. To put it bluntly, the FBI didn't just catch the courier. They hacked into the company's servers, gaining access to the entire customer list and the CEO's bank accounts. The loss of $350 million in goods was a painful blow, but the intelligence coup was the fatal blow. It allowed U.S. forces to take down their entire network on land as soon as dawn broke. Back at sea, the cleanup proceeded with cold, ruthless military precision. The Coast Guard did not tow the 115 boats back to port. The fuel cost to tow the scrap metal was more expensive than their value. Under international maritime law, they were considered a hazard to navigation. The standard procedure of the U.S. Coast Guard was simple and effective. They used heavy machine guns to shoot the remaining hulls until they sank to the bottom of the 4,000-meter deep sea. The 115 speedboats, the cartel's pride and joy of half-baked technology, have now become the most expensive artificial coral reefs on the planet. So what is the lesson here? The cartel was wrong to believe in homemade technology. They thought that quantity and stealth materials could defeat the patience and tactical minds of the U.S. Navy. They forgot one thing: information is king. The FBI had won this battle the moment they decoded the radio frequency. The 17 minutes of chaos at sea were just a fireworks display to end a sentence that had long been passed. This interception sent a cold message. You can run faster, you can be invisible, but you cannot escape a trap set by the perfect coordination of U.S. intelligence, the Navy, and law enforcement. And if they still think the ocean is a safe place. Recall the image of 115 helplessly drifting boats and ask yourself, is there an eye watching you from 30,000 feet? Thank you for following this special report. Click like and subscribe for exclusive military analysis and let the experts know. In your opinion, what new tactics will the cartel devise after this bitter defeat? Submarine drones or nuclear-powered semi-submersible vessels? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe for exclusive military analysis from Navy Vector. Goodbye and see you next time.